My name is Eleanor Whitaker, but everyone calls me Ellie. I'm 65, retired from 35 years of teaching, and I've spent the better part of my life solving other people's problems. I like order, routine, and knowing where the people I care about are at any given moment. That control evaporated the moment I realized Lily hadn't answered her phone. Not once. Not in 7 days. At first, I convinced myself she was busy work friends' errands. But by day 3, the pit in my stomach had grown into a hollow weight. By day 5, I was calling her neighbors, her friends from college, even colleagues at the boutique where she worked. No one had seen her. No one had heard from her. Each unanswered call sent a sharper edge through my chest. I dug out old photographs while pacing the living room, clutching the phone like it might magically ring. There she was at 6, scrunching her nose at the smell of wet paint as we painted her bedroom together. Independent, even then, climbing the old oak tree in the yard without a second thought. She always had her secrets. Her little mysteries, but she'd never gone this long without a word. I ran through every possible explanation in my mind: missed calls, a dead battery traffic, a minor accident. Each possibility only tightened the knot of fear in my chest. I imagined her curled up in her apartment, frightened or hurt, and I felt both guilt and helplessness. I had raised her to be independent, self-sufficient, capable. And yet here I was, realizing that no amount of preparation could protect her from the world or from her own choices. The sunlight shifted across my living room, brushing against the family photos on the mantel. My hands trembled as I dialed Lily's number again, listening to the endless ringing. 7 days. 7 days of silence. I grabbed my keys and purse, forcing myself toward the door, heart thudding in my chest. Portland's streets waited outside, quiet and unsuspecting, as if nothing were wrong. But I knew better. I had to see for myself, had to find out where Lily had gone and why no one had heard from her. I gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary as I drove through Portland's familiar streets, the late afternoon light casting long shadows across the sidewalks. Each turn reminded me of 1,000 moments. Lily skipping past the coffee shop on Hawthorne Avenue, her little backpack bouncing as she ran to meet a friend, the time she had tripped over a curb outside the library and scraped her knee so badly I had nearly carried her home. I remembered kneeling beside her, dabbing antiseptic and bandaging her tiny leg, whispering reassurances she barely heard through tears. Those memories, soft and tender, clashed violently with the fear coiling in my chest. 7 days. No calls. No messages. The thought of her alone, trapped or hurt, made my pulse hammer in my ears. I drove past the park where she had learned to ride her bike, wobbling, and determined, my hands hovering near the handlebars to steady her, even though she didn't want me to. I realized how many times I had been her shield, her anchor, and how suddenly I felt useless now. I glanced at the rearview mirror, seeing my own reflection lined and pale, a stark reminder of 65 years of careful vigilance. Aging, I realized, had slowed me just enough that panic became my closest companion. My breaths came shallow, my mind racing through every minor accident, every scraped elbow, every time Lily had vanished into her own world without a word. Could my daughter really be in danger? Or was my imagination spinning out of control? The city hummed around me, oblivious to the storm inside my chest. I passed familiar shops, the old theater marquee, and a row of cherry trees just beginning to bloom. Each landmark tugged at memories, each memory twisted with fear. I pressed my foot harder on the accelerator, knowing I couldn't wait, couldn't hesitate. I had to see for myself, had to know where Lily was and whether she was safe before the daylight faded entirely. The building's hallway was quiet, too quiet, and the familiar hum of the air vents only made the silence feel heavier. I paused at Lily's apartment door, my hand trembling as I reached for the knob. The door was slightly ajar. A sliver of shadowed space greeted me, dark and cold, as if the apartment itself were holding its breath. My pulse surged, my stomach twisting into knots I hadn't felt in decades. I nudged the door open further, taking cautious steps inside. The sight that greeted me stole my breath. Lily's apartment, usually tidy and bright, was a disaster. Clothes lay strewn across the hardwood floor, an overturned chair rested near the coffee table, and a half-full mug of coffee had tipped over, leaving a dark stain that ran into the corner. A picture frame had fallen, glass shattered, and the faint metallic scent mingled with the sharper tang of burnt toast or spoiled milk. It was as if someone or something had stormed through, leaving chaos in its wake. I swallowed hard, my hands shaking so violently that I nearly dropped my keys. The apartment felt alien. Everything smelled wrong, stale and sharp, a mixture of neglect and something that hinted at haste. My eyes darted to the bedroom door. Lights were off. No sound came from inside, yet the emptiness pressed against me like a physical weight. I called out softly, "Lily." My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. No answer. I took another step forward, scanning the room for clues. A stack of papers had been knocked onto the floor. Her backpack lay open with its contents spilled. I noticed a pair of shoes kicked halfway across the room. Even her desk was a mess. Pens, scattered papers, bent, a small, potted plant tipped over, soil caked onto the surface. The fear coiled tighter around me. Trembling, I considered calling the police immediately, but a part of me hesitated. What if Lily was simply hiding or asleep somewhere, unaware of my panic? The thought offered no comfort. My heart pounded in my chest, and sweat beaded at my temples. I felt my chest tighten, the familiar fight-or-flight instinct surging through me. I couldn't stay frozen in the doorway, but every step felt precarious, as if one wrong move might shatter something irreparable or reveal a threat I wasn't prepared to face. I moved cautiously, scanning corners, peeking under tables, and listening for any sound beyond the faint hum of the refrigerator. The air was thick, stale, and unsettling, pressing against my senses with every cautious breath. Nothing moved, yet everything suggested that someone or something had been here recently. My mind raced, imagining scenarios I didn't want to consider. Then from the far end of the room, I heard a faint, uneven shuffling. My stomach dropped. My hand clutched the doorframe for support, knuckles white. I took a slow, deliberate step toward the noise, every nerve on edge, aware that whatever awaited me could change everything in an instant. I stepped further into the apartment, every movement cautious, deliberate. "Lily," I called softly, my voice barely more than a whisper, but the silence answered me back. My eyes scanned the floor, the furniture, every shadowed corner. The apartment felt larger than usual, empty, yet claustrophobic, as if the air itself were holding its breath. Her backpack lay on the floor, tipped over, books and papers, spilling out in disarray. I bent to gather a notebook, glancing at the open pages. Notes in her familiar handwriting, sketches of flowers and doodles, along the margins interrupted by hurried sentences that made me wonder if she had been in a rush or hiding. On the desk, her phone rested on the charger screen, dark, untouched for days. A personal diary lay open beside it, the pages fluttering faintly from a draft, revealing fragments of thoughts I wasn't meant to read. Worries about work, fleeting frustrations, and hints of loneliness I hadn't known she carried. I froze at a faint sound from the bedroom corner. Thump, shuffle, something soft yet deliberate. My heart skipped. I held my breath, ears straining, telling myself it was the refrigerator cycling, the building settling, or my imagination running wild. Yet even as rational thought tried to calm me, the hairs along my arms prickled. I took another cautious step, scanning under the coffee table, behind the sofa, and along the edges of the walls. Each small clue, the scattered pens, a half-empty water bottle, a single slipper painted a story of sudden disturbance. Not forced entry, I thought. Too personal. Too familiar. This chaos belonged to her, yet something or someone had disrupted the order she usually kept so meticulously. As I moved, my mind wandered to memories of Lily's independence. The first time she refused my help, learning to ride her bike, wobbling down the sidewalk with stubborn determination. The afternoons she spent exploring the park, returning only when she deemed it safe. The secret sketches tucked under her bed that revealed a world she wanted to claim for herself. She had always been strong, self-reliant, clever beyond her years, but the very traits I had admired now intensified my fear. How had her independence led her here alone, possibly in danger, without me knowing? My chest tightened, and I felt the weight of my responsibility pressing down harder than ever. Each step forward was careful, measured, yet every instinct screamed to run, to scoop her into my arms, to protect her from whatever was causing this silent chaos. I called her name again, a trembling whisper this time, my voice cracking, and waited, listening for any reply beyond the faint thumps that refused to be ignored. I froze mid-step, my hand hovering over the doorknob of Lily's bedroom. A soft, uneven noise came from the closet, shuffling, dragging, almost deliberate. My stomach churned, a cold knot tightening with every beat of my racing heart. I held my breath, straining to hear through the thick silence of the apartment. Shadows stretched across the room in the dim light filtering through the blinds. Dust particles floated lazily in the golden streaks, disturbed only by my trembling movements. Floorboards creaked under my weight, each step amplified in the quiet. I considered calling the police, but something inside me hesitated. What if Lily was hiding, frightened, or worse, trapped in some harmless but humiliating predicament? The noise continued rhythmic, now almost pleading. My pulse thundered in my ears, breath's shallow hands clammy. I leaned slightly forward, trying to peer into the corner, every nerve screaming that something or someone was there. Each thump of movement set my imagination spinning through worst-case scenarios, memories of childhood accidents mingling with grown-up fears. I took a careful, deliberate step closer to the closet, the air thick and heavy around me, carrying a faint smell of dust and old laundry. My chest tightened, my throat dry as my fingers brushed against the doorknob. The shuffling paused briefly, then resumed with urgent insistence, and I knew there was no turning back. My fingers tightened around the doorknob, every nerve on edge. Slowly, carefully, I pulled the closet door open. Shadows shifted, and there, huddled in the corner, was Lily. She was curled into herself, small and fragile dust, clinging to her hair and clothes, eyes wide and fearful. A favorite stuffed bear was clutched to her chest, worn and crumpled, as if it were the only thing holding her together. "Lily," I whispered, my voice trembling despite myself. She flinched at the sound, pressing her face further into the bare sobs, stifled and quiet. Relief hit me like a wave, sharp and overwhelming, mingled with shock and lingering fear. I knelt beside her, heart hammering, tears threatening to spill. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here now," I said, voice catching. She lifted trembling hands to cover her face, and I gently drew them down. Her hair was tangled, her cheeks streaked with dirt and tears, and yet she looked so familiar, so vulnerable that my chest ached with both love and guilt. I wrapped my arms around her, careful not to jostle her too quickly, letting her realize she was safe at least for this moment. Her sobs quieted, but her eyes never left mine, wide and searching, as though measuring whether I would scold her for being scared, for being alone. I shook my head gently, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "No more hiding, Lily. I won't let anything happen to you." For a heartbeat, The chaos of the apartment, the scattered belongings, the silence that had tormented me, all of it seemed to pause. Relief settled, but a shadow lingered, a gnawing worry beneath the comfort of her presence. I held her tightly, whispering reassurances even as questions formed in my mind. What had she endured? Why hadn't she reached out? The closet door remained open, letting dim light spill across her small figure, and for the first time in 7 days, I felt a fragile thread of hope. Lily's small shoulders shook as she clutched her stuffed bear. I was cleaning the storage area, she whispered, voice trembling. A shelf collapsed, and I got stuck behind it. I tried to move it, but it wouldn't budge. I was so scared I didn't want to call you. I thought I'd get in trouble if I told you I couldn't manage on my own. I knelt beside her gently, brushing dust from her hair, letting her feel the safety of my presence. Lily, I murmured, holding her hand. You're never in trouble for needing help. She buried her face against my shoulder, and I could feel the weight of her fear. The week of silence pressed into every shiver. As she explained the sequence, the pieces began to fit together. Her phone battery had died the day she got trapped. The neighbor who usually checked in hadn't stopped by until days later, missing the early part of her ordeal. Lily had tried to push herself, moving the shelf, crawling out bit by bit, only to get temporarily trapped again, each mishap adding to her anxiety. The apartment had been in disarray because she had tried to create a path through the clutter to escape safely. I exhaled slowly. Relief washing over me mingled with a prick of guilt. My imagination had painted every worst-case scenario in vivid, terrifying detail. Accidents, intruders, or worse. In reality, it had been a mismanaged series of small, understandable events, magnified by my worry and the week-long silence. I held her tighter, feeling the tension leave her body, slowly replaced by the fragile tremor of relief. It makes sense now, I said softly. All of this, it wasn't danger from someone else. It was just you trying your best. She nodded against me, tears still damp on her cheeks. For the first time in 7 days, the apartment felt a little lighter, the shadows less threatening. I realized how quickly fear had taken hold, how easily my mind had leapt to the worst outcomes. Yet even as relief filled me, I knew the memory of the past week would linger, a reminder of fragility, independence, and the complicated dance of trust between a parent and a grown child. Slowly, I helped her to her feet, guiding her toward the couch. The soft afternoon light spilled across the room, illuminating the scattered belongings, now less menacing and more a testament to Lily's effort to manage on her own. We began picking things up together, the first careful steps toward restoring order and peace. We moved slowly through the apartment, picking up scattered papers, righting overturned chairs, and stacking Lily's books on the shelves. Each small task felt like a step toward reclaiming normalcy. Each item restored a fragment of calm that had been missing for days. The sunlight spilling through the blinds caught motes of dust, drifting lazily, giving the room a quiet, almost sacred stillness. Lily placed her favorite mug back on the kitchen counter, glancing at me with wide, apprehensive eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom," she murmured, voice quivering. "I didn't mean to scare you so much." I knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and shook my head. "You didn't. You did the best you could. That's all anyone can do." As we worked, I thought about the past week, how quickly fear had taken hold, how easily I had imagined the worst, and how fragile our routines truly were. At 65, I was no longer the mother who could swoop in and solve every problem instantly. Aging had tempered my energy, but it had sharpened my vigilance, my awareness of what could go wrong. I realized that open communication, trust, and patience were more crucial now than ever. We paused for a moment and made tea steam curling between us as we sat on the couch, side by side. Lily leaned against me, a small weight of relief, gratitude, and lingering fear, while I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Our eyes met, and without words we shared forgiveness, understanding, and the quiet bond that had carried us through the ordeal. The apartment slowly took on its familiar shape again. Books, aligned, photos upright. The faint scent of lavender cleaning spray mixing with the remnants of dust. Every small gesture, hugging, arranging items, pouring tea, felt like a promise that we could rebuild, that we could move forward together. By the time the evening light softened through the windows, the apartment was quiet, restored, and filled with a tentative hope, the first of many steps toward healing our trust in our hearts. The week following the incident settled into an unspoken rhythm. Lily returned to her routine school projects, work shifts at the boutique, and evening walks through the neighborhood. I watched her from the kitchen window, noting the careful way she navigated sidewalks, the small smiles exchanged with neighbors who had peered curiously into our lives during the chaos. Subtle changes marked our days. Lily answered my calls promptly, no hesitation in her voice, and shared minor details of her schedule without fear of judgment. I noticed a cautious respect in her glances, a patience in her movements as we worked side by side. Our conversations, once brief and clipped, now lingered over tea, over chores, over stories of the day. I found myself reflecting on the week we'd endured, how fear had twisted small obstacles into imagined catastrophes, how my protective instincts had both shielded and constrained. Memories surfaced: the overturned chair, the darkened room, her trembling whispers in the closet. Each recollection reminded me of my own limitations and the balance between vigilance and trust. Life moved forward, carrying the lessons quietly, like sunlight spilling through blinds after a storm. Lily laughed again with neighbors. I completed my daily routines with calm focus, and for the first time in days, our apartment felt truly lived in. We had endured fear, but it no longer controlled us. Ellie and Lily strolled slowly along the winding paths of Laurelhurst Park, the spring air crisp and fragrant with blossoms. The city lights beyond the trees glimmered softly, reflections of safety and continuity after the week's turmoil. Lily walked close, matching her pace to her mother's, the familiar rhythm of their steps grounding them both. "I'm glad we're talking more," Ellie said, her voice steady, carrying the warmth of reassurance. Lily nodded, eyes bright, a small smile lifting the corner of her lips. They spoke of routines, plans, and small agreements, checking in with messages, leaving notes when schedules were tight, and simply being present for one another. Every shadow in the park seemed less threatening now, every rustle of leaves a reminder of life moving forward. Fear, once a constant weight, had softened into understanding. They had faced uncertainty and anxiety together, and their bond had emerged stronger, tempered by the ordeal. Ellie reached for Lily's hand, squeezing it gently. "We'll get through anything," she murmured, and this time her words felt true. The lights of Portland twinkled ahead, steady and reassuring, a promise that the future, though uncertain, could be met with trust, love, and courage.